Okay, we're currently streaming live the first meeting of 2020, January 6th. Trustees meeting.
I call this meeting to order. I'll call the roll in alphabetical order. Mr. Grumbles.
Present.
Mr. Rivers.
Here.
Ms. Taranto.
Yeah.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item of organizational business is I will invite a motion to elect a trustee as chairman of the board.
Are we doing a rotation?
Well, I think it makes sense to rotate amongst the chairman of the board. However, I would like the opportunity to serve as chairman of the board for several reasons. One being that I think it was made very clear early on last year that I was chairman in name only. I think that there's a lot of ineffectiveness in our meetings that we can greatly improve upon, that given the opportunity we can make a lot of progress, make far more productive meetings. I also think since my time here, there's an opportunity that the board can have a shared vision for the overall, for the big things. We're not going to agree on everything. However, I think now with our current alignments, we've got an opportunity here to have a shared vision that we'll be able to make a lot of progress.
I do believe in the rotation. I always respected you for that decision. And with actually I'm going on my 9th year here. I have the most experience, and I do believe I provide a leadership to the township. So I'm disappointed to hear you say that. I'll let the two of you decide how the vote goes.
What's precedent? Has it
Make a motion.
Has it consistently rotated? No.
In the last, since Mr. Rivers became a trustee.
Prior to that, though, it wasn't a rotation.
There was some rotation.
It went both ways. There were times that, I think right around maybe 2000, 2003, where they just kind of kept it the way it was for a while. But I think it'd be fair to say the majority of the period that I've observed, there's been a rotation. I think that's a fair statement.
But there was one trustee that was never chairman until I was appointed, and they've been here for 2 terms.
And as you know, there was probably a reason for that.
Well, and as I stated, I think there's a reason for myself to be allowed the opportunity.
There is no requirement. The board chooses its chair.
Okay.
Is that a motion, Mr. Rivers? Is that a motion to nominate yourself?
I was asking a question.
No, I'm sorry. I was just asking.
No, I did not make a motion. But my question was more rooted in precedent, and then what the goals would be of being a chair. What that entitles for each of you, I guess I would be curious to know. Sounds like you both want to do it, so it would be something that I would have a deciding vote on. So I would like to hear what maybe you would want to accomplish.
I believe that the position works closely with the directors as well as the administrator. You set the agenda, you lead the meetings, you keep the flow. You keep the stress level to a minimum in the audience. I'm hoping with this board, though, that we will work well together and be professional and not argumentative, but discuss. It is absolutely an honor. To me, it's not ego-driven. Sometimes I think it can be viewed as that. So it's just an opportunity to lead the township.
What about external?
External,
you talked about
have
the internal township stuff, but
right.
I think a big concern in our township after campaigning was not just internal with our township, but how we're behaving and operating externally with our partners in the county and different areas too. So I didn't know if that was something that interests or appeals to you.
You do attend certain meetings. You are the person that's usually addressed when there's a situation or the threat of a lawsuit. But externally, I believe all three trustees, we represent the township to the outside entities.
Understand.
Yes.
More of just your personal interest.
I know that Mr. Rivers has a passion for county and economic development, and I have absolutely no issue encouraging you to continue that. I think we all have areas that we're best in. You'll find out what your area is, that your passion is.
Sure.
And I think we should all recognize what each other's, what they're best at.
I think with our meetings, there's a lot of things that are outdated that need to be brought current. I had some different ideas to bring forward last year. It became obvious that anything that I brought forward was not going to be considered. I don't feel, like I said, as chair last year was a name only. I don't feel that the opportunity to really serve and lead the meetings was ever extended to me. I withdrew with rotation, but based upon the actions of last year and how things went, that's why I welcome the opportunity, to serve. I'm committed. I don't have I don't travel. I'm here internally and externally to make sure that everything functions properly. Change usually is difficult, however often necessary. I think I'm willing to bring forth the change that we need to make the progress and adjustments that we need going forward that have been existed in the past.
Go ahead and make your motion, Mr. Rivers, so that we can move forward.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
I asked him to make his motion so that we can move forward.
I'll make a motion. I'll do it. Since it sounds like I have the deciding vote, I'm having a problem taking accountability for that. But I did want to say before I do it that I think hopefully a bit in this meeting, but in the subsequent days and weeks as we start to work together as a new board, there were some things that transpired last year that concerned me personally, especially in the last month and a half, I should say. And so, I didn't have the luxury of understanding the full detail as an external party. And I don't understand the full detail now, even still, because I'm just starting in role in capacity. But I have enough concern externally just after seeing what transpired and kind of went forth. I don't want to make a change in the structure of the board as a result of that. I don't have a desire to be chairman. Obviously, I'm not experienced or tenured, nor do I have the relationships. But I will be happy to point out those instances as we migrate forward or move forward as a board, so that it doesn't. So there is some weight provided behind why I'm making this decision to motion to elect Trustee Rivers as chairman of the board of trustees for the calendar year 2020.
Second.
Mr. Grumbles?
Yes.
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Ms. Trento?
Yes.
Okay, the next item of business is to open the floor for nominations for vice chairman of the board of trustees.
I make a motion to make Ben Grumbles vice chair.
Would you like to be vice chair?
No, it's not. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll second.
Ms. Trento?
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles?
Yes.
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
At this point, I will turn the balance of the meeting over to the chair.
Thank you. All right, thank you. That moves us to our liaisons.
I do have some changes for the agenda if you wanted to.
Would you want to go through organizational business? It's second, or then we have agenda changes and public comment? Or do you want to go agenda? Do you want to move that up?
It's up to you, sir.
All right. Why don't we go through the liaisons first, and we'll move into the agenda. So we have several here. The first is the Maintenance and Parks Liaison. Do we have an interest in that? Mr. Grumbles?
I do personally.
Okay.
I'd like to know who else does before.
I make the motion that Trustee Grumbles serve as Trustee Liaison to the Orange Township Maintenance Parks Department for the calendar year 2020.
Second?
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Ms. Tranto?
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles?
Yes.
Trustee Tarano, you've been the liaison for public safety. Do you wish to continue as?
Sure.
I make the motion that Trustee Tarano serve as Trustee Liaison to the Orange Township Fire Department and Delaware County Sheriff Department for the calendar year 2020.
Second.
There's 2 seconds. Okay. Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Ms. Tranto?
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles?
Yes.
I'd like to serve as the liaison as I have in the past for zoning. So I'll make the motion that Trustee Rivers serve as Trustee Liaison to the zoning office for the calendar year 2020.
Second.
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles?
Yes.
Ms. Tranto?
Yes.
Outreach and Communications Committee Liaison, I'd like to hold off till like that's on the agenda, so I want to cover later on. So I'd like to hold off on that till later in the meeting. I assume Ms. Bonnie wish to continue as the Delaware County Regional Planning Commission representative.
Yes.
I make the motion to appoint Michelle Bonnie as Orange Township representative to the Delaware County Regional Planning Commission for the calendar year 2020.
Second?
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Ms. Tranto?
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles?
Yes.
I make the motion to appoint Jeff Beard as Orange Township alternate representative for the Delaware County Regional Planning Commission for the calendar year 2020.
Second.
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles?
Yes.
Ms. Tranto?
Yes.
For the Records Commission, I make the motion that the chairman of the Board of Trustees, Trustee Rivers of Orange Township, Trustees Orange Township, and Township Fiscal Officer and the Township Administrator serve as our Records Commission for the calendar year 2020.
Second?
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Ms. Tranto?
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles?
Yes.
I make the motion to appoint Trustee Rivers as Orange Township representative on the Enterprise Zone Committee for the calendar year 2020.
Second? Second?
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Ms. Tranto?
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles?
Yes.
I make the motion to appoint Lee Bodnar as Orange Township representative alternate to the Enterprise Zone Committee for the calendar year 2020.
Second?
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Ms. Tranto?
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any agenda changes?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the fiscal office would like to make an addition to item number 10 under fiscal office report. They would like the addition of alpha C, which is the authorization of Township Fiscal Office to reallocate within a fund. So that would be under item 10 and become C. And then I have a change for item number, let's see, it would be in item number 11, letter A is the discussion of possible action regarding the Township Hall renovations project. I'd like the board to consider tabling that to the next meeting. Reasons behind that are legal review of the documents in the ORC for impacts upon that type of a construction project are not yet completed. Also, I'd like the opportunity to bring new trustee Grumbles up to speed on this project. And also, I'd like to invite the architect design team to attend the next meeting to provide an overview of the project for the board's consideration and dissemination.
I had a few questions on that item. Is it okay if we keep that on the agenda?
As you desire.
Thank you. That takes us to public comment, and I want to just restate as far as public comment and our rules in our meetings regarding public comment. Speakers are allowed 3 minutes. The subject does not concern the legislative or administrative responsibilities of the township government. We may refer you to another party for your answers. There is a maximum of 2 items that you can speak on per meeting. So with that, do we have any public comments here today? All right. That takes us to approval of minutes. Do you have any questions regarding the minutes?
The template did not get into the resolution did not get into the template, so you could probably just read a simple resolution like we've done before.
Okay. And we're just approving the electronic recording of the December 16th meeting. I make the motion to approve the electronic recording of the December 16th meeting as the official minutes.
Second?
Ms. Rivers?
Yes.
Ms. Tranto?
Yes.
Mr. Rumples?
Yes. That takes us to our zoning report. Ms. Bonnie?
Alright. Okay, so tomorrow, for zoning commission, we do have 2 applications to be heard. Application number zone-19-05 for Lewis Center Ravines. It's a single family plan residential district amendment. Following that is application number zone-19-06 for Courtyards at Clear Creek, which is also another single family amendment. Next, we have on Tuesday, January 14th, for zoning commission is the second hearing for the Evans Farm single family amendment. That's application number zone-19-03. Following that is Wednesday, January 15th. Zoning commission will be hearing the first hearing for application number zone-19-07. That is 6605, 6601 Columbus Pike. That's where the old hot tub store that it is on 23. And they're proposing a new plain commercial district. More meetings. Following that is Thursday, January 16th at 6 p.m. is the Board of Zoning Appeals. We just have one application for that evening, and that was tabled from last month. So that's a use variance for a court. That's for Lewis Center Ravines at Clubhouse. They want to have a sales office in their clubhouse. And then the last zoning commission meeting we have scheduled is on Tuesday, January 28th at 7 p.m. Application number is zone-19-02. I think that's the 4th hearing on that. It's the Turkey Hill signage amendment. Hopefully we'll wrap that up soon. And lastly, on the zoning report, I will be asking the trustees to schedule a hearing date for application number zone-19-04 for the Little Bear Clubhouse amendment.
We want to schedule that for our next meeting.
You don't have meetings scheduled outside of this meeting, just to let you know.
That was my next question. Obviously, we have the meeting schedule in here.
Normally you do the organizational business and then you do the actual agenda, just FYI.
Should we table that until the meetings are finalized?
Well, let's set the meeting and we'll go back to that. Our next meeting date was set for January.
Which is a Tuesday evening?
Mm-hmm.
On page 4.
Page 5.
4 and 5.
So do we want to set at the start of our January 21st meeting at 6 p.m.?
That's fine.
You okay with that? Get to the motion here. Okay, so we said the 21st, 6 p.m., correct? I make the motion to hold the zoning hearing for case ZON 19-04 Bear Village Homeowners Association Incorporated on January 21st at 6 p.m. at Township Hall.
Second. Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Mr. Brumble?
Yes.
Ms. Tranto?
Yes.
The next item on the zoning report, we completed our interviews for the GIS specialist position, and we are pleased to say that Christopher Wagner was our top candidate for the full-time GIS position. He currently is a part-time GIS assistant with us, and so we would like to transition him into the full-time position. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
He will be starting on January 13th, so the resolution is going to be appointed to that position. We worked with Mr. McCarthy to prepare the resolution, and then once he's appointed, then we can accept the resolution for the part-time position.
I have none. Do we have any other questions? Do we need to accept the resignation first and
I think we appointed.
then appoint him then?
That way he doesn't lose any separation service.
I make the
No, I understand. It's fine.
I know.
I make the adoption of the following resolution. Be it resolved that Christopher Wagner is appointed to the at-will, full-time, non-exempt, non-bargaining unit position of GIS specialist effective January 15th, 2020. Be it further resolved that Mr. Wagner shall serve a probationary period of 6 months. Upon the completion of this period, the board will review his service and qualifications and determine by affirmative resolution to make this appointment final, to extend the probationary period, or to take such other action as is deemed appropriate by the board, all in its sole discretion. Be it further resolved that the compensation of this position shall be at the rate of $22 per hour, with paychecks to be issued on a 14-day pay period. Be it further resolved that the compensation for this position shall also include the standard employee benefits package for all full-time non-union personnel. Be it further resolved that appointment to this position is contingent upon the appointee satisfactorily completing drug screening, physical examination, and background investigation. Be it further resolved that, in view of the appointee's current employment with Orange Township, this appointment will not be contingent upon satisfactory completion of PRAGCO assessment. Be it further resolved that, unless otherwise provided by the board, all future appointments to this position shall be contingent upon the applicant's satisfactory completion of the drug screen, physical examination, background investigation, and PRAGCO assessment.
Second.
Yeah, it should say, this appointment will not be contingent upon the satisfactory completion of a practical assessment, drug screen, physical examination, background investigation. We're waiving those requirements because he's a current employee to be promoted to a different position.
Did you already go through those?
We went through those initially when we
Thank you.
appointed him. And then if we fill any, this position for anybody outside, Orange Township's implement, they would be required to go to the standard requirements. And I did work with Mr. McCarthy on that, I guess it just didn't get put into the template, so I do apologize for that.
So the last paragraph, we just need to change it, shall be non-contingent.
Second to last.
The last one.
Yeah, you
That's
just
the
need to
next- it's the
change.
next to last. Shall not.
We shall not.
Right here. Yeah, shall, you got it.
Be it further resolved that unless otherwise provided by the board, all future appointments to this position shall not be contingent upon the applicant's satisfactory completion of a drug screen, physical examination.
That's not right. It needs to be the second to last paragraph.
On
That
page
includes
16.
all of the background check requirements.
Okay, so be it,
There's the correct one.
There you go.
The last two. Be it further resolved that, in view of the appointee's current employment with Orange Township, this appointment will not be contingent upon satisfactory completion of a drug screen, physical examination, background investigation, or PRAGCO assessment. Be it further resolved that, unless otherwise provided by the board, all future appointments to this position shall be contingent upon the applicant's satisfactory completion of a drug screen, physical examination, background investigation, and PRAGCO assessment.
Second.
Ms. Rivers?
Yes.
Ms. Tranto?
Yes.
Mr. Brumble?
Yes.
Thank you for catching that.
I make the motion to accept the resignation of GIS Assistant Christopher Wagner effective January 15th, 2020.
Second.
Ms. Rivers?
Yes.
Ms. Tranto?
Yes.
Mr. Brumble?
Yes.
That's all I have, thank you.
Go back to organization
All right.
business then, right?
So let's go back into organizational and finish what we have left there. I don't,
Page 4.
so page 4 and page 5, we have a list of all the dates for 2020. Are we okay with all these dates? Do any need changed?
No issues.
I make the adoption of the following resolution, whereas pursuant to RC 121.22F, the board is required by rule to establish a reasonable method whereby any person may determine the time and place of all regularly scheduled meetings of the board and the time, place, and purpose of all special meetings of the board. And whereas the board also desires, consistent with RC 121.22F, to establish a reasonable method whereby any person may determine the time, place, and purpose of all emergency meetings of the board. Now therefore be it resolved pursuant to RC 121.22F, the board establishes and provides notice of the following schedule for all regular meetings of the board held in 2020 that sets the following rules for providing notice of all special emergency meetings of the board held in 2020. 1. All regularly scheduled meetings of the board held in 2020 shall be held in accordance with the following schedule. Time is 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. First is January 6th, which is today.
6 a.m.
Which one? Oh,
6 p.m., right?
yeah, 6 a.m. So we obviously have today's meeting. Next meeting is January 21st, 2020 at 6 p.m. February 3rd, 2020 at 10 a.m. February 18th, 2020 at 6 p.m. March 2nd, 2020 at 10 a.m. March 16th, 2020 at 6 p.m. April 6th, 2020 at 10 a.m. April 20th, 2020 at 6 p.m. May 4th, 2020 at 10 a.m. May 18th, 2020 at 6 p.m. June 1st, 2020 at 10 a.m. June 15th, 2020 at 6 p.m. June 29th, 2020 at 10 a.m. July 20th, 2020 at 6 p.m. August 3rd, 2020 at 10 a.m. August 17th, 2020 at 6 p.m. September 8th, 2020 at 10 a.m. September 21st, 2020 at 6 p.m. October 5th, 2020 at 10 a.m. October 19th, 2020 at 6 p.m. November 2nd, 2020 at 10 a.m. November 16th, 2020 at 6 p.m. December 7th, 2020 at 10 a.m. December 21st, 2020 at 6 p.m. The location is Orange Township Hall, 1680 East Orange Road, Lewis Center, Ohio. The fiscal officer shall immediately publish the above time, days, and place of all regularly scheduled meetings in Delaware Gazette, a newspaper of general circulation in the township. 3. The fiscal officer shall also continually post the above time, days, dates, and place of all regularly scheduled meetings in at least one prominent public location in the township hall, in at least one prominent public location at any other location where the board regularly holds meetings and/or conducts business, and if the board maintains a township website or subsequently establishes a township website on the township's website. 4. Any person upon request made to the fiscal officer may obtain reasonable advance notification of all meetings at which any specific type of public business is to be discussed. Advance notification shall be provided in any reasonably requested manner to include but not limited to providing notice and the agenda by email sent to an email address provided by the requester or physically mailing the notice and agenda to the requester and all subscribers on a mailing list provided by the requester. If physical mailing of the notice and agenda are requested, the requester shall provide the fiscal officer sufficient quantity of self-addressed stamped envelopes bearing sufficient postage to mail the requested notice and agenda. The fiscal officer shall maintain a list of all persons requesting such notification. 5. The fiscal officer shall maintain a separate list of news media requesting notification of meetings. 6. Where the purpose of a regular meeting is of a type for which a person or the news media has requested notification, the fiscal officer shall provide advance notice for such requesting person in the manner requested and to the news media in writing. 7. The fiscal officer shall provide notice of the time, place, and purpose of all special meetings of the board as follows. A. Provide at least 24 hours advance notice in writing to the news media that have requested notification. And B. Where the purpose of the meeting is of a type for which the person has requested notification, provide advance notice to such requesting person in the manner requested. C, prominently post advance notice of the meeting on the door of the township hall or other location where the meeting is to be held. D, if the board specifically requests notice to be publish notification as directed by the board. E, the board maintains a township website or subsequently establishes a township website, posts notice of the meeting on the township's website. 8, any member or members of the board calling an emergency meeting of the board shall immediately provide notice of the time, place, and purpose of the emergency meeting as follows. A, provide notice in writing to the news media that have requested notification, and B, where the purpose of the meeting is of a type for which the person has requested notification, provide notification to such requesting persons in the manner requested. C, promptly post notice of the meeting on the door of the township hall or other location where the meeting is to be held. D, if the board maintains a township website or subsequently establishes a township website, post notice of the meeting on the township's website. 9, if a meeting is canceled, the fiscal officer shall provide notice of the cancellation by promptly posting a notice of the cancellation on the door of the township hall or other location where the meeting is to be held. And if the board maintains a township website or subsequently establishes a township website, posting notice of the cancellation on the township's website. 10, all formal actions of the board concerning or relating to the passage of this resolution were adopted in an open meeting of the board, and all deliberations of the board and of its committees that resulted in such formal action were in meetings open to the public in compliance with all legal requirements, including RC 121.22. 11, this resolution shall be in full force and effect immediately upon adoption.
For a second.
Second.
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Mr. Rumble?
Yes.
Mr. Tranter?
Yes.
Outside of OTOC, do we have any other organizational?
Yes.
At the internet auction.
All right, so we have a resolution for the internet auction. Is that the last? Permit fee schedule. That's it, right? Do we have any questions on the last two items of business? I make the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Board of Township Trustees of Orange Township, Delaware County, Ohio, routinely has personal property, including motor vehicles, road machinery, equipment, tools, or supplies that is not needed for public use, is obsolete, or is unfit for the use for which it was acquired, which it desires to sell, and whereas the Board desires to sell that property by internet auction, and RC Section 505.10D authorizes the Board to sell such personal property by internet auction. Now therefore be it resolved that it is the intent of the Board of Township Trustees of Orange Township to sell by internet auction personal property, including motor vehicles, road machinery, equipment, tools, or supplies that is not needed for public use, is obsolete, or is unfit for the use for which it was acquired. Be it further resolved that the manner in which the internet auctions will be conducted, the number of days for bidding on the property, the identity of the representative contracted to conduct the internet auctions, the contact information of the representative, and the general terms and conditions of sale shall be indicated as Exhibit A attached hereto, bearing in its footer the version identifier of 121416 and fully incorporated by reference into this resolution as if fully repeated herein. Be it further resolved that the Orange Township Administrator is hereby designated as, and for all purposes shall act as, the Board's agent in conducting and/or administrating internet auctions held pursuant to this resolution, and that this authority includes but is not limited to interacting with contracted representative that will actually conduct the internet auctions. Be it further resolved that after adoption of this resolution, notice by the Board's intent to sell unneeded, obsolete, or unfit for use township personal property by internet auction shall be published in a newspaper of general circulation in the Township Delaware Gazette. The notice shall include a summary of the information provided in this resolution and shall be published at least twice, and notice similar to the published notice shall be posted continually throughout the calendar year in a conspicuous place in the Board's office. This notice may also be posted on the Board's internet website. Be it further resolved that the formal actions of this Board concerning and relating to the passage of this resolution were adopted in an open meeting of this Board, and all deliberations of this Board and of any of its committees that result in such formal action or in meetings open to the public in compliance with all legal requirements, including RC Section 121.22. Be it further resolved that this resolution supersedes any resolution of intent to sell personal property via internet auction adopted by the board prior to the effective date of this resolution. Be it further resolved that this resolution shall take effect immediately upon adoption and shall be effective for the calendar year 2020.
Second?
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Mr. Anton?
Yes.
Mr. Trumbull?
Yes.
And the last is the permit fee schedule. I make the motion to accept the fire permit fee schedule shown in Exhibit A.
Second?
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Mr. Anton?
Yes.
Mr. Trumbull?
Yes.
I believe that's everything. Mr. Cowan, maintenance report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Starting on page 16 of your template for page 20, I have 5 resolutions, all pertaining to the purchase of a new plow truck, dump truck for our maintenance department. The first resolution authorizes purchase of the cab and chassis. The second resolution authorizes the purchase of the plow, snow plow package with the salt hopper, as well as the dump body. And the following 3 resolutions are simply purchase orders to make that happen. The first 2 resolutions were prepared by Attorney Betts, County Prosecutor's Office. I'm asking for your consideration of this. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to try and answer them.
I'm glad to see you got this done. How long will it take for us to get it?
It'll have to be built, we should get like midsummer.
I make the adoption of the following resolution, whereas the Ohio Department of Transportation operates a cooperative purchasing program, and whereas pursuant to RC 5513.01B, the board has requested and received authorization from ODOT to participate in program contracts, and whereas pursuant to RC 5513.01B, purchases made by the board through the program was exempt from any competitive bidding required by law for the purchase of machinery, materials, supplies, or other articles, and whereas the board desires to purchase a Freightliner M2 106 truck cab and chassis from Stoops Firefighter Line Quality, and the same is available through program contract number 023-20, and whereas the board, in lieu of itself competitively bidding for the purchase, desires to make such purchase pursuant to the quote attached hereto as Exhibit A in the terms and conditions of program contract number 023-20, and has received the requisite authorization from ODOT to make such purchase from ODOT's contract. Now, therefore, be it resolved, A, the board hereby approves the purchase of a Freightliner M2 106 truck cab and chassis from Stoops Freightliner Quality pursuant to the quote attached hereto as Exhibit A at the cost of $82,573 under the terms and conditions of the quote and program contract number 023-20. The purchase shall be made via purchase order with an attached and completed fiscal officer's certificate. The board authorizes Township Administrator Lee Bonard to execute any documents on the board's behalf necessary to complete the purchase of the Freightliner M2 106 truck cab and chassis, thank you, specified above. All formal actions of this board concerning and relating to passage of this resolution were adopted in an open meeting of the board, and all deliberations of this board and of its committees that resulted in such formal action were in meetings open to the public, in compliance with all legal requirements, including RC 121.22. The resolution shall be in full force and effective immediately upon adoption, and this took place at the Board of Trustees of Orange Township, Delaware County, Ohio, in that regular session on January 6, 2020, with the following members present: Trustee Grumbles, Trustee Carano, and Trustee Rivers.
Second?
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Mr. Anton?
Yes.
Mr. Grumble?
Yes.
I make the motion, whereas pursuant to revised code 9.48, Orange Township Board of Trustees is a member of a National Association of Political Subdivisions called Sourcewell, which operates a cooperative purchasing program, and whereas the board desires to purchase a snowplow hitch under tailgates, spreader, and dump truck body through Sourcewell's cooperative purchasing program in lieu of letting bids for the equipment. And whereas contracts for the equipment are available through Sourcewell by a vendor named Henderson Products Incorporated. And whereas the board desires to enter into 2 contracts with Henderson for the equipment pursuant to the attached quotes and the terms and conditions of the Sourcewell bid documents. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of Orange Township, Delaware County, Ohio, that Section 1, the board hereby approves the purchase of a snowplow hitch and under tailgate spreader from Henderson pursuant to attached quotes 126015 at the cost of $20,150 and the terms and conditions of the quote and the contract documents from Sourcewell. Section 2, the board hereby approves the purchase of a Mark SA dump truck with installation in central hydraulic system from Henderson pursuant to attached quote 126017 at the cost of $59,524. And the terms and conditions of the quote and the contract documents from Sourcewell. Section 3, the board hereby authorizes Township Administrator Lee Bonar to execute any documents on the board's behalf necessary to complete the purchase of the equipment specified above. Section 4, all formal actions of this board concerning and relating to the passage of this resolution were adopted in open meeting of the board, and all deliberations of this board and of any of its committees that result in such formal action were in meetings open to the public in compliance with all legal requirements, including RC 121.22. Section 5, this resolution shall be in full force and effect immediately upon adoption.
Second?
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Ms. Taranto?
Yes.
Mr. Crumbles?
Yes.
I make the motion to authorize the issuance of a purchase order to Soups Freightliner of Dayton, Ohio, in the amount of $82,573 for the purchase of flow truck, plow truck, cab, and chassis through the Ohio Department of Transportation Cooperative Purchasing Program, contract number 023-20.
Second?
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Ms. Taranto?
Yes.
Mr. Crumbles?
Yes.
Make the motion to authorize the issuance of a purchase order to Henderson Products Incorporated in the amount of $20,150 for the purchase of a snowplow package via Sourcewell contract number 080818-HPI.
That's $20,155. Second?
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Ms. Taranto?
Yes.
Mr. Crumbles?
Yes.
I make a motion to authorize the issuance of a purchase order to Henderson Products Incorporated in the amount of $59,524 for the purchase of a dump bed via Sourcewell, contract number 080818-HPI.
Second?
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Ms. Taranto?
Yes.
Mr. Crumbles?
Yes.
Thank you for that, I appreciate it. Move on to the Park District Board. Just give you an update, I have the swimming pool contract, maintenance agreement, at the Attorney Vet's office for review. I hope to be bringing that to you for consideration, maybe next meeting, maybe one after, but soon. I also have the field use agreements at his office for review. It included cricket this year, 2 groups. We're happy about that. Those fields will be heavily used. So we think we've got that ironed out. I want to thank Nancy up in the front office for putting those schedules together. That's pretty grueling. She always does a great job. Township Hall custodial position. I'm working with Amanda. We will be advertising for a new employee soon, we hope. Okay.
I was just gonna say, we spoke last week and we're gonna update the position description a little bit now that Matthew's left. It's a great opportunity to look at it, see if there's anything we need to update or change. And once it gets approved by the board, then we can use that to post. So hopefully by the next meeting, if not the first meeting in February, we'll have something in front of the board. And then if there's anything you would like to see changed in that position, just reach out to Mr. Cowan or myself and we can make those changes as well.
Thank you for that. Lastly, we have a donation from Orange Fellowships in the amount of $260. And there's also a resolution for your consideration to accept that donation.
I make the motion to acknowledge and accept the donation in the form of a check from Orange Fellowship in the amount of $260.
Second?
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Ms. Taranto?
Yes.
Mr. Crumbles?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Nothing for public safety. All right, that takes us to the fiscal office report, Mr. Mayor.
Yes. At the last meeting in December, the board approved the blankets and also the annual purchase orders, but the resolution for the temporary appropriations did not make it into that template for some reason. So we are putting it here. We're using the same the same resolution as we had last year. And the Exhibit A is in the format that's required by the county auditor. I apologize for that. It's different from other things you've seen, but the numbers are the same. And after we send this to the auditor today, and they'll return a certificate that we can proceed, Patty will produce an appropriation status report with all the new numbers and provide it to the board and to the department heads.
And these are just the temporary appropriations.
Those are all of them, and they include everything that was provided by the department leaders, as Mr. Bodner said at the last meeting.
I make the adoption of the following resolution, whereas revised code section 5705.38 requires the Orange Township Board of Trustees to pass an appropriation measure on or about the first day of each fiscal year, which is January 1st, based on the revised tax budget or the official certificate of estimated resources received from the Delaware County Auditor. And whereas RC 5705.38A permits the board to pass a temporary appropriation measure for meeting the extraordinary expenses of the township until no later than the first day of April. And whereas the advantage to passing a temporary appropriation measure is to allow time for the township to receive from the auditor the amended certificate of estimated resources that will be based on the actual balances the township will receive. And whereas the board believes passing a temporary appropriation measure now to be followed by the annual appropriation measure from April 1st will achieve more accuracy in appropriating funds and will prevent shortfalls or the need for supplemental appropriations. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of Orange Township that to provide for current expenses and other expenditures of the board during the first quarter of the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2020, the following sums be and same are hereby set aside and appropriated for the several purposes for which expenditures are to be made for and during said fiscal year, as follows via Exhibit A. All formal actions of this board concerning or relating to the passage of this resolution were adopted in open meeting of the board, and all deliberations of this board and of any of its committees that result in such formal action were meetings open to the public in compliance with all legal requirements, including RC 121.22. The resolution shall be in full force and effect immediately upon adoption.
Second.
Ms. Rivers?
Yes.
Ms. Granto?
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles?
Yes.
If I could just mention, at the December UAN training that the auditor state puts on, they announced that it's mandatory that all townships use temporary appropriations going forward because it resolves so many problems. So starting last year, we were a year ahead of the pack. Fund and within that department. But we needed to validate, so it has the search it has a copy of the search with the auditor state to make sure they don't have any outstanding findings against them, etc. And what the board normally does with this is they look at them, and by consensus they can say we're fine. If a board member wants to schedule a hearing for one of these, they can do that also. So it's totally up to the board.
We have cancel liquor permits.
Yes.
We have
We're good?
consensus. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks. Sorry about that. Now we're back to three allocations.
I make the motion to authorize the township fiscal officer to make reallocations within a fund when necessary in order to prepare warrants.
Second.
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Ms. Granto?
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles?
Yes.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Under administrative report, we had the discussion regarding township hall renovations. My question was, is there anything right now as far as expense that with this project is currently in process? I know we approved, I think there was a $50,000 that was approved. As far as what was spent, where things currently stand, I guess, where's the progress between now and the next meeting?
It's currently being reviewed by Isaac Wiles, Burkholder, and Teeter, as I was directed by the board to do. So those costs would be approved, if that's what you're asking me about costs, correct?
Right. And with this project, from day one, I'm fine with the work being done in the front office. I think that's necessary. It involves employee safety. That's something that we all always, I think, want to make sure of. However, I'd like to see an assessment done for the space here, what's needed. To spend that kind of money with not really knowing if it's needed, or I just think that's been handled very poorly. And I don't want to see us spend any money until Trustee Grumbles is caught up and has a full, done his research and got a full scope of the project to allow him to weigh in on it. Anything you'd like to share?
I think that's the plan. I got some correspondence from Mr. Bodnar. It included several documents, and a few of them were sizable. I'm trying to get through those now, so just more legal and agreement stuff. Are you specifically working with Isaac Wiles on like the contract portion? Is that what it is, or?
They're reviewing the contractual documentation and also any ORC impacts upon the project. There are some caveats in the ORC that speak to Township Hall renovations, not renovations, but expansions, improvements, and construction. He is looking under case law to see what the definition of improvements entails. He was also reviewing the documents for to submit for bid,
Okay.
project for bid.
Okay.
So if I'm hearing you both, you want me to have him cease moving forward?
I didn't say that.
Okay, no, that's what I'm asking.
I recently met with the prosecutor last week, just a general meeting, and to go over. And actually, one of the things that I did look at was the revised code section that you cite related to township renovations and such. So I'm not sure what specifically is. The only thing I would say is be curious about is of the documents I received. If there's something that they're looking at that's already been done, or is it something in addition to what's already been done that they're now looking, like the actual work itself?
I don't know exactly or precisely where they are at this given point in time, other than they're not prepared to submit to the board at this point in time. That's why asking for.
No, I'm okay with that part, but you're asking, let me try and rephrase. You're asking them to review the
bid documents.
The bid documents themselves and what the construction to be done. There's no concern over the work already done. That's okay. You're asking about the subsequent, whether we need the three quote, the RFP, all that stuff. Like the legal requirement related to the second
bid process.
Okay, but nothing to date is of concern. That's been done.
No, nothing. There's nothing that puts the board or the township in the position where they have to move forward, if that's what you're asking. And I'm not quite clear, and I apologize. I'll try my best to answer. There is nothing at this point that cannot be ceased or halted. There's nothing that we are in a rotation for, with the exception of the pending complete review by Isaac Wiles, Burkholder, and Peter. Then I thought that it would be pragmatic for the board to hear from the actual architectural design team to vet any questions that the board had. They're certainly better able to answer them than I will ever be able to.
So I got the documents from you. The reason I was asking for clarity on the legal side is as I reviewed those, I didn't know if I should do so with any sort of different lens, knowing that there's a legal review going on. Those are fair game to go ahead and review in full with no caution or concern.
Not from my perspective, but if you would make any changes, those would have to then be reviewed.
Okay, perfect. That's what if they're going to decide on something related to what you sent, then I would pause. That's all.
Okay, so Trustee Grumbles is going to review everything, get caught up on where the project stands. That's kind of our plan of action here going forward, correct? Yeah, we're working on a date, so we're gonna meet and go through it. Okay. All right, that takes us to the tabled.
I do have one more thing, Mr. Chairman, if I could, and I apologize for interrupting you. The department leaders and I would like to ask the board's indulgence for a strategic planning meeting in February of 2002. We did this last year, which was the first year that the group provided such information to the board. It went through as a special meeting of the board so that it didn't interfere with the regular business of the board. And we would like your consideration, don't have a date yet, but just want to put that on your radar for consideration probably at the next meeting.
Thank you. Under old business, we have the tabled receptionist position that has been discussed. In reviewing the duties for the position, I think there's a lot of different things on there we haven't decided on, like events. I would like to kind of see us get a firm handle kind of on our plan for 2020, the events, the schedule, what we're looking at first before we settle in on. I just think there's a lot of gray area right now in that position that I'd like to see us kind of get our plans finalized for the year before we open up and move forward, if that is a position we're going to move forward with.
Would you like that removed from the agenda or tabled?
I don't know if you remember, we had a study done from the auditor state, and we're actually a very well-oiled machine, very efficient according to the study. One of the recommendations was another admin assistant. I know that we're using Mary Ann much more with Mr. Cowan, and I know he needs assistance. My concern, and I would love to get this position hired so that they can get trained, especially before spring, when the pool kicks in. I'm not really quite sure what you're saying. I'm a little lost as far as events, and I'm not sure what that has to do with this position.
Under the duties, it's listed as one of their job descriptions, working with events.
Well, I think they would probably, if Amanda needs assistance, yes, or Bill. So I guess I'm not understanding the reason why we keep tabling this.
Well, if it's time sensitive, I understand that. I like to get a little better handle on it. Like I said, we wait to see what our calendar is going to be for 2020. I'm more than happy to keep it on the agenda, and it's something we can make a definite decision on at the next meeting.
Yes, let's go ahead and do that.
Anything you'd like to add?
I'd like to get more information on that personally, just being newer to the board.
I encourage you to read that, to audit, the performance audit. They did a nice job, and it gives you a good idea of the workings of the township in each department.
I've got the audit. I'm familiar with that, so I'll take a look at the specific here. And then you mentioned that, Mr. Cowan, you need some potential assistance then? Is that, I heard that. You didn't say it, but I heard it. I want to clarify. Is that?
Mary Ann is his admin assistant.
Okay.
And she's splitting her time, and some parts up at the front, sometimes in his office. And you probably have enough work for her to be in your office full time.
Absolutely. Yeah, right now she's 4 hours in the morning on some days when she can.
And
Okay.
when the pool kicks in the spring, all of the pool passes and so forth, it's a very time-consuming job. We normally hire a temporary person, but I'm not sure that we would need to even do that if we had a new admin assistant. So all those things are things to consider.
Yeah, that made a lot of sense when you mentioned that. So you've got half an FTE really with you, and then now with the pool uptick, that satisfies a full workload. So it sounds like it's something that everybody's worked on and agreed on. I had some other questions with the position description, and then just to clarify one last thing, it reads as though they report up through the administrator. If there's a department that has a specific need, would it make sense to have the person flow up through the department itself, like a dedicated resource, or headcount. If you remember, Amanda, I actually requested an org chart. And so the performance audit section actually has the headcount. But when I said org chart, I was more referring to how each department's arranged. So Chief Noble, when we met, provided with, a full outline of the fire department, who's which house, et cetera. So here, as I learn, that'd be one thing I'll be happy to work on as I go department to department and spend more time. But it will help me to understand and then maybe ask questions that will help us all align, I think. But if the work's there's no, just looking at the position description, though, I want to make sure that if we approve something, it reflects that it reports up through the proper department. So if parks and roads, et cetera, and maintenance need additional administrative and clerical work, then I think that person should report up through that department to give them control of that resource. That's just an example of clarity that I'm hoping to get in the next few days. But thank you for the note on the pool too, Trustee Chirito.
Okay, that takes us to new business. As I brought up earlier, I think our meetings, there's several different changes we can make that make our meetings a lot more efficient. I know this has been discussed, but as far as, for example, some of the resolutions read today are rather long. I don't see why we can't number our resolutions. So when we make a motion, you read the number instead of having to read several pages of resolutions. That's one recommendation I would like to make. I think our agendas, I just use this as an example, something I just drafted. Our agendas need to be streamlined and skinny down, where it's a matter of listing out the main action items. Right now, it's a long list of things. Skinny it down, and then, in the agenda, you have the resolutions with the numbers and what that resolution, the action that's taking place, what that resolution provides. I found this to be a typical way that most meetings are ran. Instead of a template, you have a stack of resolutions. They're all numbered. You go through the major items on there, and then you just go through the resolutions of what you're paying bills and what work needs to be taken care of for that. Really, these meetings, 90 minutes to 2 hours. I don't see why there's any reason why our meetings would go longer than that. With the employees and those involved, I feel like once you get past that 90-minute, 2-hour mark, people start to fade. It's just not an efficient way to run meetings. If we have that much activity and that much business to be done, I think we need to set more special meetings. But I think we really need to work at the time and consistency of these meetings and focus on the business at hand. I would expect for us as trustees, as we're working through things, that we're asking the questions, we're doing our homework, we come to the meeting ready to vote. We may have a question or two or some things, but it's not getting caught up on what's going on or what's in process. You come to the meeting, you've done your homework, you're prepared, and you're pretty much ready to take action.
Mr. Chairman, also this would resolve the issue we've talked about before of potential conflicts between the stated or read motion and the journal. Simply reading by number will have one version, period, that's your record.
I also would like to propose that we have the rules for the meeting as far as public comment, that kind of thing, all at the front welcome table. So it's very laid out as far as how our meetings work. And it's very clear as far as what the consistency is and the structure of our meetings.
I understand what you're saying, and I don't disagree. I will tell you that as I prepare for the meetings, I like the info that this provides. It might not be necessary for the meeting. I use it as part of my preparation for the meeting. Having just a resolution number and approving bills, I actually like to see what those are as part of my research, my preparation. So I do get the backup. I imagine that I could probably go from there. Speaking of meetings, I'd like to, in all due respect, sir, I feel have an officer here is, it's very cold. It sets a different tone for the meeting. I never agreed to it last year. I don't agree in spending the money for a special duty officer unless it's something special that we need them for. And I'd like to see that stop.
Sure. I mean, it's something that I think started, a year ago? Is it necessary?
No, it's not.
I'm okay with, as needed.
No issue with either way.
That's fine.
Mr. Mayor, I think you and I have discussed this idea of reading by title only, and you had indicated that you would be able to assign numbers to resolutions in advance. Those resolutions with the assigned numbers could be included in the template, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I've done some research in other organizations, including the county commissioners. Their meetings are about 20 minutes long. Other townships, they do the same thing. They have a list of resolutions and they read the number. Also, I learned an idea from Mr. Cowan that they did back in East Liverpool. They don't have resolutions, they have ordinances, but every proposed ordinance, every proposed what we call a resolution receives a number immediately, and it sticks with it, and it may get passed, it may not, but the number, so you can always refer to an ordinance or a resolution by its number, no matter what the status is. I think there's a lot of ways that we could make this much more efficient. Like I said, other townships I have visited get through a whole lot quicker. It does require a lot more preparation on I'm not sure, but I should say more, because I'm sure our trustees already spend time to prepare, but it does require that every trustee is well prepared by having read everything in advance.
Is there something changing? I'm not catching because it's my first meeting, so excuse me for asking. Maybe I got this packet a few times now with everything in it
There's a draft.
as a draft, right? So
The first one is a draft, and then as people keep adding things on right before the meeting, then you get the final one at the meeting.
clear on that component, but I'm not sure that is there a proposal to not have every resolution and all the draft detail provided to the board, or is it that there's a cover that has?
That was not my intent. I understood Trustee Tranda indicating that she did appreciate having the full resolution to read, and certainly a summary at the beginning is fine.
That's all I'm asking.
You can work that out.
It sounds like that's what's going to, like a cover sheet, right? So,
I think you still want to read.
but the backup document will still be, everyone will get it, so we're fine.
My only concern is the transparency to the residents, because here, like, for example, authorizing grant agreement, maybe they would like to know what the grant is for.
Mhm.
Reappointing committee members, what committee members?
Well-
So I do believe there needs to be a little bit of transparency here.
And like
I
said,
agree with that.
I just did that as a draft. As far as the language, just to get an idea of a summary. But what I would propose is we'll keep the agenda, keep things as is. However, I would like to work with Mary Ann and have a draft of changes that I think would make sense that we can share internally along with the agenda. So we can keep these the same, but keep this as an ongoing document that when there's a comfort level and everyone's in support of making that change, we can. But these still give us the ability to look and see if it makes sense and if revising the current structure.
It doesn't make sense to have Mary Ann do it. To me, this is a fiscal officer job, especially when you need to have the resolution numbers in place. She's going to be doing a lot of running back and forth with this. Technically should come from the fiscal office.
But yeah, I'm with the fiscal office and that's fine.
So the transparency comment, I think, is well noted. That, as we were talking through, that's something that also crossed my mind, is that if somebody's here that wants to listen to the resolution or that didn't get a chance to look at, I mean, I don't know that there's access to the full draft
that they have, right?
No, just the meeting agenda.
So-
That's where they get their info.
Okay, so then that would be a concern for me too. So I would have interest. I also spoke to several townships through previous to starting part of the campaign and then post after the election. And one township in particular that continues to impress with their kind of the way they're organized. I'd like to, they do things this way, but they have everything public on their website. The way it's organized and presented, and I was impressed with it. It seemed like a good balance. So I would like to propose that we, and you made a comment too, Mr. Mayor, that you're aware other townships do this. So if we can get maybe a list of 2 or 3 and look at best practices, maybe something that, Lee could, Mr. Bodnar, sorry,
Lee's fine.
could assist with too, or what have you. But I think it'd be worthwhile to at least consult with people doing it today to find out if they've had those same concerns and how they addressed or mitigated those. 'Cause that is one for me too.
If I could interject, the role of administration is to provide the board with precise, exact knowledge that allows you to draw conclusion and take action. That's really what we want to do. So the manner in which we provide that is up to you. And we're willing and able to dovetail into whatever you would desire.
And in regards to transparency as well, I think there's opportunity when people come in at the welcome table to have the resolutions prepared. Because obviously, as far as the business that's being conducted, you want the public to understand, know what's going on. So I think there's a good mix. I guess the first place to start, in my opinion, is just numbering these resolutions and getting a process together for that. And then, as far as the agenda and how this goes out, it'll be a work in progress. But to me, that just makes the most sense as the starting point in making our meetings more efficient.
And Trustee Triano makes a good point. It sounds to me like the main focus and drive of the information that would serve the agenda would come from the fiscal office. So really, I would be suggesting that the fiscal office take charge of the agenda.
Is the fiscal office okay with helping begin this process?
Yeah, that's a really interesting comment. In small townships, the fiscal officer does everything that the board doesn't do, and sometimes they take turns driving some up. In big townships, I haven't found any where the fiscal office is responsible for the agenda, or for that matter, for writing up the minutes. The law says the fiscal officer shall keep the minutes. It doesn't say that the fiscal officer is responsible for writing them up. The topics are all across the place. I'm happy to work with Mary Ann, and we have, but it's the board's meeting. It's not a fiscal office meeting. And in the other townships of similar size, in fact, other townships, they don't have the fiscal officer call the roll because it's not a fiscal officer duty. There's been a lot of confusion here over the last 10 years about what a fiscal officer should do and shouldn't do. And I think as we go through this process, we have to clarify that, make sure things are in the right place. If more and more is put up on the fiscal office, we will have to increase our staffing.
Who sets the resolutions?
I'm sorry?
Who sets the resolution numbers?
Well, in Bill's example, who is it, Bill, in the city of East Liverpool, who comes up with the resolution numbers and puts the package together? Or, I'm sorry, the ordinance numbers, just as an example.
They would come from the clerk of council. Clerk of council said this.
But here in Orange Township, who sets the resolution numbers, like 19035-07? Where does that number come from?
Well, after the meeting, what we have done in the fiscal office, because we need the numbers, we have put the numbers in so that they end up with a number. If you have a number on every resolution, then whoever puts the resolutions together just starts numbering them, because it doesn't matter the order. That resolution will always have that number, whether it gets passed or tabled or defeated or whatever. So, I'm not responsible for the board's agenda. It's a board meeting. I'm not responsible for actually taking the minutes, although I've been doing that lately. I just think we need to look at other best practices, but I think there's misunderstanding, especially in this township, about the role of the fiscal officer.
If I could just share with the board, Mr. Mayor, I seem to recall you desired to take over the minutes before they were a function of the administration department, and you desired to have control over those, to rewrite them and to submit them to the board for approval. That's the way I recollect. I could be mistaken, but I would rest on the other trustees' insight.
I guess you really didn't answer my question. Where does resolution numbers come from? Is there a book that you keep with all the resolutions in it?
Yes,
And you have to
yes.
have a number?
Yeah, when you sign the minutes or going forward, when you sign the journals, they're kept in a leather-bound binder in a locked, fireproof cabinet. We have them going back for many, many, many years. Those resolutions all have numbers. The primary reason for the numbers is so that it's easy to actually, like on a purchase order, when we put the resolution number on there, that helps the auditors when they come in to find the
So
resolution.
you're going in a sequence. The fiscal office is going in a sequence with the number.
Mary Ann puts at the top, well, you don't have it on yours, maybe, but I have it on mine. The next resolution number is 20-001.
Got it.
Okay, and that's where I start, and then I go through and I listen to the video, watch the video, and as things occur, then the ones that are passed, I put them in approximately that order.
Okay.
Sometimes you go out of order. The order doesn't really matter as long as there's no duplication of numbers. So that's kind of the process right now. I think the whole thing, what Mr. Rivers is bringing up is something that's important for us to look at best practices, because there could be ways that we could be doing things differently that would be more effective and more efficient for all of us.
So I'm happy to take the lead. If the fiscal officer right now has the information of where the numbers are, I'm happy to take the lead and start to implement this. I just need a little bit of direction of make sure I'm labeling these properly, but if that's what's necessary to get this moving, I'm more than happy to take that role on.
Just write the number in as we're going through the meeting.
Well, but if
They're
you
not
put it
there.
on the agenda, kind of like that.
If we get a draft and we know what the last one was, we can just write it in the draft and resubmit or email that to everyone, or however we want to communicate that out. I think that the problem and where Trustee Taranto was going was that we've got to be able to communicate the relationship between the number, the topic, and whatever information we provide. So if you walk into the meeting today and grab a giant stack of paper and you're a resident, you've had no access to it before, you're trying to keep up, we're offering public comment and those types of things, and I think it's well noted that they have an opportunity to come and comment on pending business before we make a vote and lock that in.
Sure.
So that's why I wanted to propose we talk to the other townships to find out how they've gotten around that rather than navigated through that. What I found on one township's website was information related to this in full, so that it's accessible by residents. Then you have to question, internet access and that kind of thing. So
Just to make a point, just because another township may do something a certain way, doesn't necessarily make it right.
agree.
Orange Township actually is very efficient, and I consider us a leader. So I just want to point out that it doesn't necessarily mean we're doing anything wrong. But I'm all about being more efficient.
I'm not implying that we are. I think that both points are well noted. I'm just trying to make sure that we take time to consider each other's positions. That's all.
Absolutely.
And then, with change, making sure that we're cautious as we pursue that. And in this case, as a former resident a month ago, I can say that I always wanted to have this information coming in. So maybe it's, if we talk to a few townships, I'm not suggesting that we adopt what they're doing or that they're better or that they're worse. But oftentimes when we open our perspective up a bit, we might be able to pick and choose components that allow us to develop our own best practice.
Absolutely, but
So-
always at the same time putting the resident first. And
That's right.
transparency.
Yeah, no problem with that. So, what are we going to do here with this? I think the direction, I've heard a few things. So is it something where we can take a swing at getting the summary page done before the next meeting, include the draft as is today, and then come in and see, maybe we've had a couple weeks to talk, get some information from other boards and see where we're at? Is that fair?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay.
I think for the next meeting, try and take a swing at having these numbered in advance would be a good starting point.
And who are we proposing? I think there was some disagreement there, right? So today the fiscal office is developing the resolution number. There is a proposal that the administrative office, I'm guessing, is where the two, with Mary Ann and et cetera, right? So do we have alignment on who's going to number them? I know you volunteered or offered to do that.
Can I explain the difference? When the resolutions come in now, most of them go to Mary Ann, and she starts building this template. The only reason they weren't numbered in advance previously, I guess either people didn't think about doing that, but because they weren't numbered, but they could have been numbered in advance as they come in or as they appear on the agenda. Anybody can put those numbers in.
Okay. So since we know the last number we have today.
But let me finish, please.
Okay. Sorry.
So what happens now is that after, because they aren't pre-numbered, after the meeting's over, then somebody has to go in and number the resolutions that were passed. So that has fallen upon us because we're the ones who really need those numbers. But in the future, we could have those numbers numbered, or the resolutions numbered by anybody, and then that number would stick with that resolution no matter what happens. If it gets passed, it's already numbered.
Noted that. Thank you. Right. And I think that's fine to have retain a reference. I think that's well noted. So it still brings us to question because there's a change. So what I'd like to ask is if the person writing the resolutions today is who? Mary Ann?
That's putting them in the template.
That's putting them in
a variety of directions. depending
Chris
on-
Batts, you.
They are all forwarded to Mary
The
Ann.
person that's consolidating them in this template is Mary Ann, correct? So
I
if we simply provide her with the final resolution number today, with the current sequence, the way we're doing things, so 20-10, whatever it might be, right? And then we say the very next resolution will be 11. So as you log these in the template and you go in order, would it be a big step to then assign a number as you're putting them into the template, and then just to try, see if it works?
I actually think we've spent more time talking about numbering them.
Then it would be the number of them.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. That doesn't seem to be a stretch for anybody, I don't think.
Okay.
So are we in agreement here on
Mary Ann will number as she receives.
discussions as far as the structure of it, purpose, what's going to be handled? And going back and looking at the liaisons, to me, we've got three. If you look at the liaison roles, we got three major subjects here. We got parks, public safety, and zoning. So I think we're at a point with OTOC where I would love to see us reestablish our parks committee and have that put under OTOC like it was discussed and was originally intended when the Parks Board was dissolved. I would like to open it up so we have resumes come in and put out an opening for OTOC. Try and get resumes in, and here at the next meeting, start appointing folks and make sure that we've got OTOC up and running, for 2020, and really see it expand and have a true, clear understanding of its purpose and what exactly OTOC's will be responsible for, what they're going to be working on, what we're looking to them in an advisory committee to be handling for the board. Any thoughts?
Sorry for the newness here. It's being long-winded or dragging things out, but I'll do this until I'm comfortable with the dialogue and making sure that everybody
Sure.
that has a concern is good to go before we move forward. One of the things with OTOC, I tried to find some information about coming in and find out where things were. I do recall some meetings in the past where the Parks Committee was suggested. I don't recall if there was a vote or not, but I know it didn't happen. And of course, through the last year and talking with residents, it's something that they're passionate about. So I do think that there's merit in bringing some form of parks representation back, and making sure that they have a voice and can engage in the township with the parks. The other thing, just a question and observation, was that with OTOC and then with the liaison role, every department had kind of representation except Amanda. Didn't really have a touch point from a board standpoint. I know by organization or design that you technically report up through the administrator. However, HR typically has the ability to, there's some independent reporting structure in all of my experience where there's nothing, they're tied directly to the decision-making authority, as so to ensure that you can do your job without any sort of, not saying it's happening. It just was a different approach to me, having them report up through a specific operational person. And so I wanted to bring that up as something externally coming in that was new and say, hey, is there an opportunity to have our human resources function with at least a liaison on the board that they can partner with directly, or that they can keep up with matters to keep the collective board? Is it something that we want to keep the way it is? Is it working well? No answer required. It was just different for me. So an example of externally, my experience would be that you have operations, leadership, directors, administration, that kind of thing. And then HR reports up through the company from HR has its own, they have their own entire independent
Typically, it's
director.
the chair that she reaches out to for particular, and then it'll be brought, something in particular will be brought to the rest of the board, usually via an executive session.
Okay.
Because many of the items with HR are sensitive or private, not public. So that traditionally is how it works. Would you agree with that,
That
Amanda?
has been, in addition, it's a small department, so, it's a department of one, and that's my job duties. So if it's split, there just hasn't been a need to have a liaison in the past. I typically will work with the chairman, that's who I would report to, but obviously I work with the administrator as well. I'll talk leadership, go through the administrator, and then report to the board.
Okay. So no formal need to make it. And then what about the other thought was the communications component? And I did meet with most everyone before officially starting when I had a window of opportunity to do that. And I know that's a dual role for you, and we talked a bit about that. But with the communications piece, is there, reason I'm asking about this specific one is when you think of OTOC and the name and the framework, there's a lot of overlap. And so when I was looking at it at an aggregate level, almost every bucket that exists or one that I thought might help that we can talk through in time kind of naturally fit into a director's bucket. So parks, does that make sense? So communication, et cetera, and then you have a liaison for all of those buckets except for communication and HR. So HR, I understand, no need to change, and that's operating fine.
When we had a parks board, she worked directly with them quite a bit when we had events and that type of thing. But then when that went away, she was on her own.
So
basically.
communication would extend beyond parks, right? Public
Well, her
communication.
communications, anyone,
Township-wide.
yeah, township wide.
Right. So would that make sense to have a liaison for communications with her at this time? Or no?
Within OTOC, I had 4 areas of focus: parks, communications, business development, and events. And I thought that's kind of, we use that scope as far as posting and what we're looking for potential committee members. And I'll give you an example, like for parks, I would love to see us do some outreach to the leagues. They're going to be using North Road, and get some surveys and some suggestions or input as far as if we're making additions to that park, what would the users of that park like to see? What's their input? What are their thoughts? What makes sense for them? I think that'd be a great opportunity. So that's something I think to look at OTOC.
But again, I don't think you should just stick to leagues. You need to look township-wide.
Right.
2 years ago, that committee was on fire. Great leadership, got lots done, the branding. And this past year, it just literally died. So I think you need to find a way to keep them on fire and engaged and encourage them, projects that are township worthwhile. So I think that's a big thing that needs to be addressed with that particular committee.
Well, and I think 2 years ago they had a clear definition and a clear what duties, what projects they were handling. It was all very
Laid out?
Thank you. This past year, there wasn't much direction from the board, people they're volunteering. They want to make sure their time is being well spent. So it wasn't laid out. It wasn't very clear. So that's why I would hope for us as a board that we can get back on track and say, here's the things of interest, here's the projects, here's what we need assistance with, and get the momentum back for that committee.
All of the questions I was asking were just to say kind of what you just touched on, both of you. We've assigned an independent liaison to every, kind of department. But then there's this liaison for OTOC that's supposed to be an independent, one person. But viewing OTOC as a touch point to where we already have existing liaisons, it almost kind of, just thinking through it from an engagement standpoint too, to say, hey, if we roll that liaison into, hey, that committee falls under, that Parks Committee falls under Parks, kind of makes sense, right? So I'm the liaison for Parks. I'm going to work with that OTOC group. Emergency services, sheriff, that kind of thing. So public safety would probably be a good one to have under OTOC in some capacity. And I would expect that you would be the liaison for that. There's a lot of concern about sheriff coverage and coyotes and whatever the case may be. So that's where I was trying to bring, maybe we pause here and think about how we move forward.
I think when we have that strategic meeting, that is something we probably should address.
Perfect.
And all of us do a little of our own research before we actually discuss that.
So I would agree. I guess the question is, does it make sense to have a specific trustee as the OTOC liaison, or do we each have a committee within the structure of that committee that we handle, and it's a shared effort?
I'm leaning towards that.
I like that. We're all engaged and working together. It's not a one-person show.
I don't think it's a committee that I think it'll probably take a good year to build it up and get people on it and address the needs.
So could we have a posting go up that we're looking for resumes?
Or should we wait until we have our strategic
Framework.
meeting?
Well, as far as just a general subject, just to collect resumes and open something up, it does take time, and I want to make sure that we are getting applicants. So should we just make it kind of generic? As far as here's the subjects, here's the things we're looking to tackle. If you're interested, please submit your information. That way we start getting them now, because it is going to take some time, and I would like to see us, get some traction, get things moving.
I'm okay with that personally.
That's fine.
So for the posting, I think we have an agreement: parks, communications, events, and then I would put business development.
Can we phrase the posting in a way that's, like you said, kind of generic, but not limited to those, like, but if you're interested in participating in your township government or in your community, we'd love to hear from you. Topics and committees that exist may include things such as areas for you to contribute, that kind of thing.
So I think we have an idea, so maybe put it together and shoot it off to us to review. That'd be okay.
All right.
I'm sure Amanda can.
Question?
All right, takes us to our last item on our new business. So for this year, in legal fees, we set a new record. We spent over $300,000 in legal fees, which to me is just unacceptable. We also have been, it's been a concern as far as the contracts that we have in our agreements, and that they have not been properly handled. There's a copy here that I have with Eastman and Smith. It's a fee agreement. This is what we have. This is what we should have with all of our legal counsel. I think this is absolutely necessary going forward. So I'd like to propose that we look at completely restructuring how we handle our legal counsel. I'd like to move forward today with approving Eastman and Smith as someone that we can use. I think to get things under control for the time being, I'd like to see all of our new business for legal and legal counsel be pushed to the prosecutor's office. That's including anything with our zoning.
That 300,000, is that township wide?
Yes, it is.
And I do believe that we can attribute, our fire department had quite a year. Our fire department is one of those things that we are working on, some things under control. We've also had a busy year in zoning. And looking at this Eastman, number one, I haven't heard of them before. And for someone who would handle any township business, I would need to talk to them, even interview. I was looking at their website, and for some reason they had Orange Township Economic Advisory Board as one of their clients. What is that? Does anybody know?
They have representative and attorney there that served on that board years ago.
What was his name?
Brian Johnson, I believe.
So how would they're listing it as one of the entities that they have represented.
No, it was civic groups that they've worked with. So as a representative, he'd worked with our economic development board.
Brian Johnson?
I believe that was the name.
It hadn't been over 10 years ago. I don't think we had that board then. Might be wrong. Might be wrong.
The OTOC was organized and conceived in 2017, so
okay.
prior to that.
Okay.
And I can tell you that I just came in, I didn't work a lot with economic development, and we never had a full council that was on.
And I go back and look, I may have his name wrong. But I know he sat on when it was the economic development board.
And he's an attorney with this group?
He isn't in the contract as someone we'll be working with, but they do have someone that's part of that firm that sat on that board in prior years.
So they were volunteer to that board,
Correct.
what you're saying?
Yes.
Makes sense.
And basically, we're looking at $300 an hour for the attorney.
The breakdown as far as the representatives who we will be working with and their fees are included in this. I think we need to take advantage of the prosecutor's office. This is, I think, a great example of the agreements that we should have in place. However, this needs to be in support as a supplement to the prosecutor's office, only in situations when the prosecutor's office is not available. So I'm not looking to duplicate or continue the ways of the past.
Who are you looking to replace?
And then I would also like to add that this firm represents over 95% of the townships in Franklin County. So as far as going out and looking for different firms, to me, that was one of the things that I would like to see is some new blood outside of Delaware County to bring kind of some new perspective to this.
Why would you want to go outside of Delaware County?
Well, there's a variety of reasons, and obviously with our history and our past, and some of the things with legal, I think some new blood would be a welcome addition.
So it has nothing to do with Delaware County. You're just looking at new blood.
Some folks that we haven't worked with in the past, and that also, we're very familiar with townships. Full service firm that can provide all that that we need for the time being. I would also like to put out a RFP. There's several other firms that I would like for us to consider, but I'd like to make this a formal process that we get the chance to review all these. I would like to add them immediately as it will be needed, and then with our current legal counsel and anyone that we have in the RFP, that we make sure that we're going through the review process. We have all the proper agreements and it's done properly.
I would like to review them and talk to them before anything's moved forward. It's a lot of business goes through each individual trustee, so I'd like to know who I would be working with. Who recommended this company to you?
I went through the OTA. Like the OTA is a great resource, and that's who I usually start with as far as anyone out there that is well
Who would we be
represented.
replacing?
Well, I think we need to review all of our current legal agreements and restructure how things are done here, period. So I think we add them, and then we look if we're going to add any other new firms through an RFP, and then we review who we currently work with, what those relationships are, and make sure that they're properly with the proper agreements in place, and it's being handled in the way it should.
So this is $300 an hour, and Mike McCarthy is $149 an hour. I'm trying to understand that.
Well, I think if you're looking at the hourly rate, obviously this would be something that would be a supplement. So I don't know if that's apples to apples. If you're using someone for a few hours for projects here and there versus someone that's being used full time.
Okay, well that makes more sense. So this is a supplement. They're not going to be handling all of the township business. This is just a supplement. Say fire needs somebody or union negotiation or something like that. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
It's a legal resource. It's above and beyond the prosecutor.
And how can I meet them?
So
I'd like to meet them
yeah.
before we decide on any vote.
So I have a question about something that was said there, that legal firms represent each of us, or you said each of us work with them. You made a comment that each of us will work with them and handle work with them independently, et cetera, right?
Well, I think anytime there's, for example, Evans Farm, there was a lot of questions, and I would call up our legal counsel before the hearing to get some questions answered. Or a pending lawsuit, I might have my own questions as part of my research. And we're not lawyers, any one of us. And I've seen lawyers save us from our own poor decisions sometimes.
I just wanted to qualify what you meant by that.
Yeah. That's
Because
part
I
of
know
research.
that they're, the prosecutor made it very clear that they are representatives of the board collectively, right? So we're not going and asking them to take any action independent of that. Advice is different, but actually.
Any attorney works for the board.
Correct.
They can answer questions of any of us individually.
Right, questions, but I just want, you answered the question.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just need some clarification on what you're looking to me to provide. Is there something that I should provide, or you wanted RFPs? Do you want us to move forward on that, or?
Yeah, I would like to put in, I guess what Trustee Grimbles, what are your thoughts?
I agree with an RFP for sure. For anything we're doing, I think it's worth pausing and considering if that's proper. And legal services are certainly a competitive industry. And so I think it would be good to hear not only rates, but, you know, qualifications and references and that kind of thing to look for. Everybody, you know, that was around last year and saw, you know, campaign material or whatever however you want to reference it, they know that this was something that I mentioned. So I realized there's a little bit of assumption rooted in that and that kind of thing too.
Thank you for acknowledging that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm transparent. So with that, I spoke about it because I did public records requests and I got the data, and it was concerning to me externally. It still concerns me a week into the role. That our legal expenses are what they are. You know, I talked with multiple townships, and I specifically had interest in talking to limited home rule townships. The reason is that they're required by statute to have a law director, so they have a full-time attorney or person that is no reliance upon the prosecutor. So everything would route through at least one or two persons. So
Were any of them as busy as us? We're almost like a city.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that. So typically the home rule transition happens when they become bigger. And I actually spoke to a specific township, one that I thought was the most like ours. Similar from a statistics standpoint, they've grown faster. Their economic development has happened faster. They have different tools in place.
Was it a township? Because townships can't have economic development.
That's not. I don't agree that that's necessarily true. I think that's been
And I think the home rule township could move into that.
I think that any township can. Jackson Township's one that came up as engaging in economic development through different things.
Right, we
different
do
manners.
ours through the county, but we work with them closely.
Okay, so I think townships can engage in economic development within the law. And so there's a ton of material. I think it's Albers and Albers is a firm that touches on that. There's presentation after presentation that I reviewed. And of course, I wouldn't do anything without vetting it through an attorney. But the specific township that I found where there was a responsive board is the same one by luck that has that I thought did the best job of the agenda, the thing we talked about earlier, right? They're a limited home rule township. They're similar in size to us. They've grown past us. Their economic development's pretty robust. They have a JED. They have different tools in place, and their JED's very productive, by the way. Over $2 million a year last I
Yeah,
looked.
ours won't be like that.
Right, the one that's potential now.
Correct.
So they've done things over a decade that are pretty remarkable, frankly. And talking regarding legal fees, they look at $200,000 a year for all of that. They've never really skyrocketed past that number. All things included, they have police contract, they have a fire department, much like we do, and so one thing in the industry that's always beneficial as a starting point is benchmark analysis. So I just looked at benchmarking our performance with theirs from a financial standpoint, and just to see where there's maybe red flags that warrant further review. This legal services thing was one of them, and as you touched on, there are different sources. Last year, I got with the fiscal office and got numbers, and so I can speak about outside of all the other topics you touched on, $186,000 roughly was related to advice and counsel on general matters, if you will. The rest of that, $110,000, that gets us to $293,554, is related to the specifics, the stuff that the prosecutor's office isn't going to touch anyway. So we're never going to get away from legal expense. I accepted that last year. I accept it now. It's understood. I think the prosecutor is well equipped to help us. I met with them and I asked. But I also think that any transition is going to require us to change too in the way we operate. And I am taking that and noting that openly as well. I think that, when I spoke with other boards and I asked about their commissions, for example, no one else has legal counsel at every zoning meeting that's essentially de facto running the meeting. I think that there are some concerns from my position anyway coming in and having attended a few of those meetings. The commission or the board or whoever that I know they've grown accustomed and comfortable with the status quo, but I would really say, what's the intent of those boards, and if we are yielding that authority over, whether intentionally or through practice, then maybe we ought to pause anyway and take a look at what we're doing. And frankly, we have a responsibility, in my opinion, because we're far above. And I do acknowledge that Orange is unique, that we're our own township, and we should do things in the best interest of our residents. But I would say we need to. There's some work here that we could do that I think short things up. You look at the resolutions, there's no contract, and the ambiguity there is concerning. I don't think we should operate that way with any regard, let alone legal. I think that it allows for self-application above and beyond where the board might incur an expense on behalf of the township. I would not want to yield my authority to decide upon that as one of three to anyone independent. So,
And I'm all for, we all can look at changes and do things for the best of the township and our residents. I also want to remind both of you that there is always the opportunity and the need to be courteous and appreciative and respectful on how we make these changes, and very much to show appreciation for those that came from the past who have a long history, and we are in a beautiful place now because of that history, that we show all those people courtesy as we move forward.
I would. That's well
And
noted.
respect.
Yep, and I have no problem with that. I think that's a good point, and I'll make sure that I remain mindful of that.
Thank you.
In that light, and talking about the zoning commission, in the Board of Zoning Appeals, I also understand that they have the right to request legal counsel as well, or to ask questions, as well as you, Michelle, as the zoning director. But I would like to also respect the departmental heads as being able to run their respective departments as well. And so, in addition to respecting the past, I would like to also set a precedent here today or whenever with this board to respect the directors of our departments and give them some autonomy. They're responsible, whether they've been held accountable or not. Everyone's responsible for their budget and their fiscal performance, in my opinion. That's something that we should talk about and look at, but also making decisions on behalf of their department. So in this case for zoning, I would look to Michelle to say, you're the expert. And if you see something of concern that you want legal review for, I would expect you to vocalize that. The board, the same, both in the commission. And then it would be on us as board members from an expense standpoint above and beyond the prosecutor's office to really step in and make decisions to incur expenses on behalf of the township. That's my opinion as to the way things should work. I'm not sure where authority was given in the past for there to be full-on, 20, every meeting, every commission, every hearing, every legal presence there that's on the clock.
Things were moving pretty fast and furious back in the 1990s and early 2000s. That was before your time. But it was pretty intense. There was a lot of wars to fight, a lot of annexation wars, a lot of fast and furious building. So all the assistance that we received, very much appreciated. And again, it looks the way it does because of that assistance. Looking at this, the new attorney that you brought, seeing how we're going to go out and look and do a bid process, I actually don't see any reason to move forward on this particular one right now. If we have anything come up, we have attorneys that are available, but I think we should look at the whole picture before adding a new contract.
Well, in regards to zoning, I think the goal should be that zoning should be self-funded.
That's always been the goal.
And right now, with the expenses, the legal expenses right now for zoning are completely unnecessary. I think that change needs to be made immediately. In regards to the firm that we have here, I would like to move forward, and I also have the issue with the recent administrator contract, the way that was handled, and I would like to have them review that ASAP.
Again, I'd like to meet them, talk to them. They're gonna be handling township business, and I think it's only fair that people who are gonna be handling our business on a daily basis, that I have the opportunity to meet and to vet.
And, I mean, they'd be happy to meet with you, I'm sure we could set that up.
If I could chime in, since we all know, legal counsel is very heavily on zoning, respectfully amongst our zoning commission and our board of zoning appeals. I would like some structure of how I proceed with legal moving forward if we do decide to make changes. I understand we're doing a contract, and, rates could change, but that's a pretty substantial change if we do decide to do that. So I would like some structure on what we would expect with legal moving forward.
And I think we're in a position right now where, there's not anything, we have a lot of activity, however, there's no major projects that are in zoning. So if we're gonna make this change, I think now's the right time to make it.
Are you're asking for a process or a procedure, or what specifically?
I would, as of now, legal is involved with all of our BZA and commission applications from beginning to end. So I think I need to know what the involvement of each of those application reviews. Just because our legal is there at all times, so.
And informally, I would say that I kind of touched on that. I would look at the onset as, is this an issue that you feel comfortable or confident is kind of a recurring rather than a general matter, right? So something that your boards or commissions have dealt with, or that you've dealt with, or that you think you could navigate through without legal counsel.
I do think we can do that, and I can work with the prosecutor's office, but I think because of how things have been going for the last 30 years,
Sure.
I'd like some type of structure to not only share with my staff, but with our boards.
Okay, that's fair. So, the prosecutor is there, and so if there's a special development or something that came up that required additional, more robust legal expertise, I would support you bringing that to the board's attention and us making a board decision on that. As far as legal goes, my personal opinion is that we start with the prosecutor's office first and foremost, always. I don't think that that we should,
So why don't we just lay it on the table and then not talk around things? So basically what you're saying, because he needs direction also, is that Mr. McCarthy is to no longer be involved in zoning.
That's not what I'm saying.
That's not what you're saying.
I'm saying that the prosecutor's office, in my opinion, should be the first consideration for legal matters in our township.
So he should no longer go to the meetings.
You shouldn't assume that he should go to every meeting. He should be asked to come to meetings when he's needed. That's correct.
Mr. Rums, if I could, I'd suggest or request that maybe we talk about what these actually do. Because I think there are different roles. I know I've done this in many roles for many years. There are different service levels that are involved. It lies with the board. It always lies with the board to determine who you want to represent. Okay, that is a board responsibility and a board privilege. I have no issue with that in the court. But I do think that would be a worthwhile discussion, no matter how you go forward. I really do.
I've been involved in zoning, been a zoning liaison. I think for Mr. McCarthy, we need to get a contract in place that hasn't happened in the past. The invoices have been months behind. Those need to be made current. And I'm of the opinion that the prosecutor's office needs to be used. this transition needs to happen. If there needs to be structure. But I think we're at a place now where it's time for a new day. We need to make some changes.
So let me understand, if I get a new application tomorrow and I need legal advice, I should send it to the prosecutor's office first.
That's,
Is that right?
that's what I'm in favor of.
And if I could chime in, then anything that affects any of the departments will go to the prosecutor's office first
Correct.
and foremost.
Unless in my opinion, the prosecutor has given us guidance on buckets of work they don't touch, right? There's no sense going to them on that.
Okay,
So
and then we're to go to who we have currently, or someone that will be vetted out through the RFP process, or we to hold on those until we get to that point?
I think the suggestion here of getting someone under contract today is so that on new matters, we can give them to a contracted firm, execute an RFP, have additional firms come into the fold that have potential expertise or that perform well. The contract that I got and reviewed here didn't lock us into any obligation, so I don't see that as being a risk. It just outlines a rate and the terms of use, and so I would I want to make sure new matters are handled in a more structured process. Personally, I think that's responsibility that we have to the community, and I would like to do that. So if I'm okay with having a firm under contract to start, but I would like to request that we go through a formal process to bring other firms to the table and make sure that we're doing diligence on behalf of the township. But I will echo that the contract is in the best interest of everyone, in my opinion. I think that when I look at one of the registers I went through with the fiscal office, and I'm looking at the legal expenses, and I look at this contract and there's payment terms. We had 6 months of back bills this year, and we're still a few months behind. And so, when you start looking at planning and budgeting and forecasting, it's difficult to come up with a number when you're not structured in that way. And I'm unfamiliar where that's an acceptable kind of.
Sometimes you have to deal with medical issues, illnesses, that type.
I'm very sensitive to that on a personal level, and I understand that, but in the township's bigger than my personal position or yours. That's what contracts are there for. They protect the interest of the public body. And so I would say,
I'm not against a contract.
okay, I would just say that way there's something there. There's stipulations and expectations so that if there are issues that surface, there's a contingency in place so that the township or the residents or the department heads or anyone isn't left to accommodate. I don't think that the billing is
I think we need to walk away here today with clear, what you're doing, what everyone's responsibility is.
Sure. Well, I would like an RFP to
Not a
go
lot
out.
of words, that we're all scrambling around.
I'd like an RFP to go out for legal counsel. We can put this on the agenda for the next meeting, and begin this process. If there's anyone that's been recommended, we can review. Obviously, set up a meeting with Eastman and Smith for you, for Mr. Grumbles as well. I would like everything with our zoning to go forward to our prosecutor's office. If zoning needs supplemental help, we'll be happy to provide that.
What about as far as attendance for hearings go? What about that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, what I would ask, I think Michelle raised a good point. We've got 6 hearings scheduled this month. Some are in various stages of the negotiating process. Am I to simply cease work on all those? I need clear guidance.
Sure.
Because professionally, I have responsibilities, I need to know clear lines, I need to document those so that if there are issues, I know which side of the line I'm on.
Sure. So tomorrow night's the first meeting of the year for zoning. So I think our zoning needs to move forward, that, hey, this is a new structure, this is the way things are handled. If there is a presence needed, then it comes from the prosecutor's office. Mr. McCarthy will not be attending those meetings. And whatever work is pending needs to be wrapped up and completed.
So, okay. Respectfully, I would appreciate if Mr. McCarthy could attend the meeting, the applications that he's just been working on since the beginning.
I agree with that.
Wrap those up.
Okay.
Because we do have several zoning commission hearings that he's been working on. So, and then maybe we can discuss a new strategy.
I would just
Yeah,
indicate to the board, I don't sit there as a referee answering legal questions as to legal process or statutory authority. My role has gone working on that. So, and that's what I would appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about. Again, I don't care then what you do. Really don't.
It's a board.
But I think understanding the different roles and whether you consciously want to forego or totally remove one from the process will have, in my opinion, very serious consequences and not positive change for the township and its development. I've been at this for 32 years, 65 years old, and to be honest, I was pretty open with the board at the last meeting. I do appreciate the consideration they've shown, but as I understand it, my physical condition is not likely to improve, and that I indicated Mr. Rivers going on 2 years ago that if it got to the point that physically I did not feel like the representative of the township, I let him know. And I seriously thought about that, sending him a notice this time. I don't think I'm there, but at the same time, it's in the room. So, again, I'd love to be involved with the development to the extent that anyone feels it's worthwhile, but more importantly, I'd like to set the stage for continued intelligent level of development that is not simply reflexive, but reactive and hopefully proactive. Those are important things.
And I appreciate the history and I appreciate your efforts. I really do. But it's got to the point now where it's time to begin transition.
I'm not arguing that, and I'm truly not. What I'm saying is, I think that the board members, those of you with more experience will hopefully realize what is actually being done. And it's not a question of me doing it, it's a question of is anyone doing it. And I think that's very important. And if it's not, it's not. The people have elected you folks. It's up to you guys to work out the answer.
So one thing we talked about early in the meeting was the performance audit. And, one of the main topics the performance audit spoke on was the need for us to rely upon the prosecutor's office. Unlike other townships.
And they've expanded their capability.
They were very clear on that. They basically said that we're an anomaly in the performance audit. And
keep in mind, at a certain point, the prosecutor's office couldn't handle our work.
I'm well aware of that, but I also don't want to continue to move the board forward on a path that's not consistent with the current state. I don't want to stay rooted in past practice that doesn't necessarily require us to stay that course. So the past is the past. Changes happened. Do we need to operate the same change or what have you to move forward? The auditor's office said we should change a couple years ago. And I think that as an outside party, if we're gonna pick and choose from their report where each of us feels subjectively that it's the best, or do we look at somebody's opinion that's in every township in the state and they've come and assessed ours and given us some advice and say, outside of our subjective opinion, here's an objective party, and this is one of the red flags. It's been on the table. It was one of the things that former Trustee Quigley brought up in the last meeting of his term. He specifically said that, and it was in reference to the performance audit. Brought that up during the campaign too. I know it's not the first time it's been surfaced, and so I think that what we need to do as a new board is look at taking action respectfully, like you touched on, and with consideration of the past and people involved, but action nonetheless. That's my opinion. And so, you know, I'm going to respect the Auditor of State's office and their group of professionals that came in a couple years ago and rendered a decision. I think we should have mobilized at that point, started making difficult decisions and transitioning. We didn't. And part of the reason I believe I was elected is to do that. And so I want to lend my support in getting a firm formally under contract that we can use on a structured basis that's transparent. I support bringing a firm in under contract in the interim that we can use until we have a full RFP completed. I do agree that our prosecutor is capable. I've sat and watched the prosecutor add to legal decisions that were being made in this very meeting and prior board, and redirect and offer advice. So with multiple perspectives, I think that we have a well-equipped prosecutor's office. I've spoken to them. They're committed to supporting us. But like I said before, I am also cognizant that there's a board relying upon the status quo. We need to be mindful of that and make sure that we're supporting them if they need legal support. That's what the contract allows us to do. Prosecutor's office is there. And I am personally of the opinion that anything you're touching or any other firm is touching, that we won't make any changes to that. I think that's the right course.
Sorry, sir, I don't understand what your last part was.
I'm sorry, Chief, go ahead.
She said that there's certain zoning matters that they're in the middle or end of their process, or
Yeah.
they're already.
Well, there's 6 of them before the end of the month.
I'm not gonna ask you to step away from work in progress because of the fact that we're contracting a party to come in and do legal services and use the prosecutor's office. I wouldn't ask you.
Well, I just need clarity.
Yeah.
I'll be honest.
Yeah.
You need it, I need it.
That's my personal thing.
I will plan on those applications going forward, and we'll transition beyond that to nothing. And then I'll confirm that to you guys. You can confirm it to me, we'll confirm it to you.
I actually had conflicting, you wanted to move forward with his current workload, you wanted to.
It's not what I said. I want him to stay. I want him to. I'll be very specific. There's zoning matters that are in process that you touched on. That you asked and requested that Mr. McCarthy continue to work through until they're completed.
That's correct.
I support that. Anything other than that, I think needs to start with the prosecutor.
If we could then, I'm not being funny, I'm serious. Right now, we've got 2 up tomorrow night.
I would say any applications that we have received already.
That might not be a bad idea. Anything received after today's date, maybe that would be a good thing.
Because we have some applications that we've received with the first
You've
hearing.
got
hasn't
one.
submitted yet.
Yeah,
If they're received and vetted, then that's in process, right?
Yes,
I'm not
everything's-
I'm gonna support you
Okay.
as best I can. My personal opinion, or position rather, is
Sure.
to support you to run your operation. And if you're requesting that as part of existing work, then I support that. I have no problem with it.
I just wanted to make sure I understand.
Oh, you
And I
agree with
agree,
that?
I agree.
And I have a question to follow up. There are other departments involved, other legal firms currently in the queue, working with them on items that have yet to finalize. Would we support them go on with those before transitioning?
That was the end of my comment. Me personally, yes.
Okay, I understand it was in relation to Mr. McCarthy. I wanted to make sure it was blanketed to everyone
Yeah.
else. Also, there was they made a mention of my contract. Would you like me to send that to the prosecutor's office? If the board would like me to do that, I'll be happy to do that.
No, I'd like to send it to a separate party. I think the prosecutor's office is the representation for each of us. I would like to send it to this firm.
Okay, and then I assume that the board has a motion that they're going to consider. And then after that motion, you'd like me to send my contract to that firm?
Yes, please. I'll make the motion to engage through December 31st, 2020, Eastman & Smith LTD, attorneys at law to provide legal advice to and representation of the township and its officers, boards, and commissions. The advice and representation will be at the specific direction and request of the township and will be related to general matters. The terms of this engagement are described in the Eastman & Smith LTD engagement letter dated January 2nd, 2020, and their fee policy, which is effective January 1st, 2019. Further, Trustee Ryan Rivers is hereby authorized to sign the engagement letter on behalf of the Board of Trustees.
Second.
Mr. Rivers,
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles,
Yes.
Ms. Tranto,
I'm only voting no because I have not had the opportunity to vet or research this company or meet anybody that works for them.
Well, we'll be happy to set up a meeting.
I'd like to have one
For both of
too.
you.
Yes.
I had some additional questions. Something new comes in, the prosecutor doesn't handle it, they don't handle any of my work, they always refer it out there about employment. I don't know if this is an employment attorney, are we supposed to go to this new one, or use the ones we've already approved for the resolutions, which are actual employment attorneys at the last meeting? How would you advise me
While the
of that?
RFP process is going through, I would expect to come to the board, and we'll direct any new business requiring legal work, where that's going to go to. But do you expect to have anything in the next 2 weeks?
Wow, that's what I'm saying, how would you like us to handle that? A lot happens in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I would say if it's urgent, if it's something that's urgent, then we would have to use someone that's approved here at the moment.
Or approved at the last meeting.
Right.
And moving forward, that's a board decision, that
Is
goes
this-
to, it's no longer a decision for the department to work with.
Hang on. This authorizes the township to use Eastman and Smith, right? They're representing townships.
They're full service.
Everything's in here, full service. Why would we not want to pursue a new matter the same as we outlined for one department?
Okay, I'm fine with that.
So this firm handles all.
They're full service, correct. And I know there's other firms I would like to be looked at, about the RFP. If you have others, let's get this moving forward and try and get settled for the next meeting, because I know this is a transition.
So they would need to have introductions for each department too, then I would assume.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So we just use this firm, we're no longer using any of the other firms that we approved at the previous meeting.
Isaac Wiles is one.
Miller.
Ice Miller.
As I understand it, everything, anything new existing will continue with the law firm started.
What, as far as comfort level, Isaac Wiles, Ice Miller, obviously you've worked with them for a while. I want to get the agreements in place that I think are necessary, but with that comfort level, that's why if we have something urgent, hopefully we won't have anything that comes up between now and the next meeting. But that's why I said I'm okay if you want to move it to one of the approved at the end of the year. I'm okay with that. If that's, like I said, something that's more comfortable.
I'm hearing something different from Mr.
Well, that's what I'm just saying. That was my opinion, so I'm asking Trustee Grumbles with his.
In lieu of not, if you haven't met these people and have, if you have a new matter come up that's a continuation of an old matter, but new in the sense of a new workload, it's too ambiguous right now with that. I think, I know with general matters, that's where my concern lies, predominantly from a legal standpoint with expenses. I'm indifferent. If you for a non-general matter, for an issue the prosecutor's office won't handle, if you want to continue to use Isaac Wiles or Ice Miller, I'm okay with that. However, when we do submit the formal RFP process and work towards a structured contract, then I think as partners with, communicating with them, the partners that we communicate with, that we do need to notify them that we are performing a formal RFP, and we would request that they, make note of that and fulfill what the request is.
Okay.
Is that easier than trying to go this new path? And
Yeah, I think as through this transition with Ice Miller and Isaac Wiles, like I said, we need to get the right contracts in place. However, with this transition, I think they're handling a bulk of the things that are in process. And like you said, if it is some new or continuation between now and our next meeting, let's continue down that path, and then we'll get whatever necessary things we need to get in place so they're approved going forward.
At the next meeting, you'll simply have a RFP to approve. That would be the process. And then you approve that and submittal, and then from there on.
So we're talking a couple months, not 2 weeks.
No. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
And I think we need a formal motion to have them, if we're gonna use them for the contract, to look at.
You just made one. You voted on it, right?
Well, right, but if we're gonna send over.
Oh, you're talking about, you want them to review a specific contract.
Mhm.
So that is something that I thought was required. I mean, in the past, I don't think that's been done. But I don't believe the motion that we just made gives any specific matter or to take any formal action, right?
Right. So do we need a formal motion?
Yep. You want to make that, go ahead.
What is it? I make the motion to engage Eastman and Smith for contract and employment regarding our township administrator.
Second.
Mr. Rivers,
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles,
Yes.
Mr. Anton,
I'll abstain. I'd just like to say before we end the meeting, Mr. McCarthy, you have put in a number of years here with Orange Township, and hope we have the opportunity to actually celebrate you and the time that you've given us. And I would certainly like the zoning commission and BZA to be part of that, because I know how much they highly respect you, as I do. You are appreciated, the past has appreciated you, past boards, and while it may be a new day, the value you've brought into Orange Township has made it the day that it is. And thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We should have an event.
No, we shouldn't.
I have no problem with that.
Improper expenditure of public funds.
No, and I
We'll contribute.
would support that as well.
No, thank you.
I make the motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Mr. Rivers,
Yes.
Mr. Anton,
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles,
Yes.
So I have a question for you. You said you felt like you were in a chair. I mean, you were the chair, and from what I saw, you were the chair, but you felt like it in any moment? Why?
You want to chat for a little bit?
Sure, we can chat.
I'll step over there. Okay. Let me wrap up here.
Wrap up.